Hello, and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown, and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Peter.
So, Chris, who have we got on the show today?
So today, Peter, we have probably a first for Dig It. We have our first social media influencer who happens to be a rather good gardener.
Okay.
His name is Michael Perry, a.k.a. Mr. Plant Geek.
Okay.
And if you are on your socials, so if you're on Instagram, Twitter, you probably will have come across Michael in that format everywhere and everywhere. He's a popular chap, promoting horticulture to everyone.
He's a very positive character. I like him. And the imagery on his... it's not a website, is it? On Instagram and those sort of things. Sorry, you'll have to forgive me, audience. I'm in the dinosaur era. I'm not into all this social media stuff. But yeah, I have actually Googled him, and I've done a little bit of research, and he's got some beautiful images, and he clearly has a great passion for plants, doesn't he?
Oh, most definitely. And that comes through, on, as you say, on all his socials and on his website too. And he's a very accomplished writer, does a really good biog. He also shares a rather good podcast as well called the Plant-Based Podcast with a lady called Ellen Mary. So he's very much out there. And it'll be really interesting to find out how he became this sort of media...
media guru, is that what they're called these days?
Guru, yes.
Fantastic.
But at the end of the day, with plants very much at his heart. So on today's Dig It, we chat to Michael Perry. Michael, where do we find you today?
I'm just in my apartment in West London, hoping that it will be sunny, because it has not been sunny for I don't know, it feels like it hasn't been sunny since last September. And it's just still so cold. What's happening? It's nearly May, guys.
Honestly, yesterday I had a frost. Now, there's been a running joke between Chris and I this year about how I'm still waiting for my bluebells to come into flower. I think I'm living in a frost pocket at the moment in Northampton, and it was a frost the other morning, so it's still frosty up north as well, I'm afraid. But tell us, Michael, what was your earliest sort of memories of gardening?
It was really gardening with my grandparents, and I often think, if my grandparents were into something else, would I have picked up on that instead of gardening? Because when you're a kid, you end up spending a lot of time with your grandparents. You know, they're babysitting, or you want to go there at the weekends, etc., etc. And for me, they were growing lots of chrysanthemums, dahlias. They were exhibiting at local flower shows as well. They were also judging shows, so they really had a great know-how. They were selling plants at the market as well. So it really was just memories of my grandparents' big garden, taken over my parents' garden as well. Early failures, but also lots of successes, and just knowing that was my passion, and not imagining that I would have anything else in my life that would be more popular than it, almost. Yeah.
Excellent.
And so can you sort of go back, Michael, and sort of pinpoint the actual age you started actually growing plants?
Oh, that's a really good question. I guess I was growing with my grandparents from the younger stage, so I guess you'd say 4 or 5, so helping to pot on. And it wasn't long until I had that patch in my parents' garden, which must have been 7 or 8 years old. Certainly we were growing runner beans at school on the windowsill, but I was already growing stuff at home even before then. So, yeah, it was really, very early stage, I'd say, yeah.
Excellent. At the moment, I've got Jack's beanstalk is currently growing on my windowsill. My son's 5, and I think it's a brilliant thing when you can get involved in growing plants, and even when it's just mustard and cress and things like that. I used to find it fascinating, sort of seeing the little seeds germinating and turning into plants. It was great fun, wasn't it? And I understand you're now a little bit more interested in herbs.
Yeah, well, actually, when I was a kid, I guess I was enjoying growing the plants, but also started to get very interested in the fact that you could use them. Right. I was a kid who was always up to the health food shop as well, and just trying different things. Okay. And I think when I was then growing the plants, I was then trying to make all sorts of herbal concoctions. When I was a teenager, I actually I was selling plants myself at the WI market, but I also specialized in herbs, and I started selling them mail order for a few years as well.
Wow.
I had a little herb called Springfield Herb Nursery.
Yep.
I had a photocopier in my bedroom, like a weird thing for a kid to spend their pocket money on, a photocopier, but
why not?
my catalogs. Yeah, it was fun. Like, don't be too impressed. It was only ever about 20 orders maximum, but it was really a cool way that I was always making money from plants, so I never had any pocket money. And herbs were a particular interest to me because, of course, so many different uses. I just used to find it fascinating that you could do this stuff with plants, and it still fascinates me to this day as well. You know, walking in the wilds, foraging, or growing my own herbs and seeing what companies like Urban Herbs do, because I can see that kind of passion that I had still there at the age that we are as well. So yeah, herbs are a real kind of spotlight area for me.
What were you doing with the herbs? Were you cooking with them at all, or were you just enjoying the smells? And
what was I doing? I remember trying to make eucalyptus mouthwash once.
wow.
Did that go well?
I remember grinding down some dandelion roots to make some alternative coffee.
Yeah.
I think the first book I had about herbs was actually a Jekka book.
Okay.
And that was the one that I pored over, because in those days we of course didn't have the internet. You'd have a book that you really it became really tired because you would thumb through it almost every day, kind of you're reading and rereading and kind of testing out this recipe and that. And yeah, and it was that Jekka book. So dandelion coffee, eucalyptus mouthwash, lavender biscuits. I actually started to sell those to the WI market as well. So yeah, it was really kind of experimenting with different flavors and different stuff you could use yourself. And it still is fascinating to me now. No?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the herbal entrepreneur, Michael, if there was one. How did that sort of decide your venture into gardening as actually a career?
Yeah, well, I guess that's kind of a long story. I mean, when I was at school, it wasn't the cool thing to be into plants. So I kind of hid that from my school friends. It kind of came a bit unstuck when I started working on the school garden, which was then at the front of the school that everyone saw. But anyway, I still was spending weekends kind of sorting out my shed, my greenhouse, not doing anything that normal kids would do necessarily. I wasn't very confident, so I got to the end of school and I really wasn't sure what the options were. I knew that I wanted to do something with plants, but to be honest, I wasn't that confident to even know what that could look like as a career. So I kind of fell into going to horticultural college, which was not necessarily a bad thing, but in those days, it was where they sent you when they couldn't think what else to do with you.
Okay.
So I went to college for 2 years, national diploma, which was really good, but very general. Lots of stuff that I certainly don't use now, and lots of stuff that I didn't have a skill for, like driving a tractor, or, stopping a tractor. I drove over so many low balls that it's not even funny. So yeah, 2 years of college. And got to the end of that, and again, I still wasn't a very confident boy, and so I wasn't thinking I could go to university and kind of, blend myself into that environment. So I was really lucky that I opened up the newspaper one day. There was a competition to design a garden at Thompson & Morgan, which is a company you'll know in Suffolk, where I live. And I put together a design which was really basic, but it was filled with plants that were raised in the Suffolk area, so it had a kind of marketing spin to it. And I won the competition. I didn't win a job, but I won a greenhouse and £100 of seed. Oh, wow. And then afterwards, I just spoke to Thompson & Morgan and asked for a job. And I was taken on as an apprentice. And that is really kind of the rest is history there.
Oh, excellent. And which horticultural college did you go to?
It was Otley, which I believe is now called Easton Otley in Suffolk, just above Ipswich.
Yeah, I fondly remember my days where, a bit like you, sort of learnt to do things that I've never done since. And I think my favourite one was laying patio slabs. It's still something I intend to learn to use one day.
I think my worst area of horticulture was arboriculture, and I remember climbing this tree and forgetting the knot to get me back down again. Absolutely horrendous. I will never live that down. Well, I live it down. I did get down somehow or other, but yeah. So arboriculture is definitely off my criteria when it comes to horticulture.
And you mentioned you won the competition at Thompson and Morgan. How did you manage to get a job there?
Well, I just wrote in because even though I was so shy when I was younger, I was really happy to write to people and ask for things. And I just, like I said, I won the competition. There was a presentation, etc., etc. And then 2 weeks after, I just wrote a letter. I think it was handwritten in those days. It wasn't, email didn't exist then. So I just basically said, are there any opportunities? The horticulture manager at the time brought me in for an interview, such a shy little boy still. And I kind of, obviously impressed them with my keenness, I guess, in plants. Yep. And I started like almost like 2 weeks after this. So I'd actually got to the end of college, and really there was no plan for me. I wasn't kind of confident enough to go to uni, like I said, and I just wasn't sure what I could do. So it's really good that this kind of happened in that way. And it was really a dream job from day one, because I was going out with the horticulture manager, looking for new plants, kind of following up leads. In those days, we'd bring a lot of new plants from customers at home as well. So I think even in my first month, I had to fly to Scotland to collect a star-shaped Petunia. We drove to London to get a black-flowered delphinium. I'd never been abroad at that point as well, so I went to Holland on the first business trip, which was my first trip overseas when I was 18, looking at field trials. So, yeah, it was really always a dream job, even across 18 years, an amazing job.
Fantastic. That's good.
And Michael, obviously, Thompson and Morgan were well known for their huge amount of publicity with the TomTato, wasn't it? So I remember this breaking. I think I was going on holiday, and we were waiting in the airport lounge, and we had all the newspapers, and it was spattered across all the newspapers. Your good self photographed with this quite bizarre image of a potato and a tomato plant basically attached at the roots. And I think that was about 2013, wasn't it? So that's, well, gosh.
I'm not sure. You're telling me that.
It's coming up to 10-year anniversary. Which is crazy. Looking back for that, because obviously that must have been a big thing for yourself. Any sort of memories and recollections of that promotion?
Yeah, so I guess I started off at Thompson Morgan working on the seed side of the company. At the same time, the young plant side was really kind of growing, so I kind of gravitated more towards there and started working with Paul Hansel in particular on a lot of exciting new products. And one of those was to really revive the TomTato, because this is a graft that's always been possible. It was done during war times, sometimes even with more mature plants. But we wanted to bring it to a commercial audience, so putting a really good quality tomato, getting the cropping times right as well. So, yeah, we brought it, we released it. We kind of knew when you release new plants, if you release a new pink geranium, you're not really going to get the interest of the press. It needs to be a wow factor. And so TomTato obviously did that. I was kind of growing at the same time. Paul was pushing me into kind of being in the media and doing like press work, because at the end of the day, I was the guy going out, finding the plants, kind of developing the new plants. So I was the best guy to talk about those plants. Yeah. So with the TomTato, that was really I think that was the first baptism of fire when it came to that. or maybe actually the release of the Black Hyacinth may have came first, because my first TV appearance was on the Alan Titchmarsh show, and that was with Midnight Mystic, the Black Hyacinth. So I think that might have been the year before TomTato. But either way, these kind of new products were really pushing me into the media world, where at first I was really, lacking confidence. But over the years, kind of, Paul really pushed me into stuff. And that's why I say yes to everything now, even when it scares me, because you can probably do it anyway, and that is certainly what happened with Black Hyacinth, TomTato, right through to the egg and chips plant, all of those cool plant releases that we did over the years. And they're the ones that get the headlines and bring in people from different kind of interest spheres as well. When we released the egg and chips plant, it was teenagers that were going mad for it on Twitter. They're not going to go mad for a new or a dahlia. So it was a new demographic each time, and that is what has fascinated me since, breaking into those separate kind of areas where people would usually be interested in plants, but suddenly you've got them hooked. It's amazing.
Well, that is definitely, it is, I should imagine, very gratifying for you. And with the TomTato, have you ever eaten the potatoes or used it for a meal?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's natural potato brava, ketchup and fries. The plant was actually marketed as ketchup and fries in the US, actually. Okay. But it wasn't, it's not so easy as just grafting, this on the top. You have to get a good cropping tomato that obviously is sooner than the potato as well. And also, like, when we got into this further, we did the aubergine on the top, for example. We needed to send them off for toxicology tests as well, because, of course, some of Solanaceae have toxins in. So we had all of these different tests done here and there. So it was all kind of signed off and cool. Just as I left, they were starting to experiment with Petunia on top of potato. But that is quite difficult because the Petunia is far too vigorous and you're not getting many potato below ground. But it's something that you can easily just play around with at home. Mm-hmm. And even last summer, I did some TomTato grafts at home. Right. It's so easy. You can do it with sellotape. Honestly, you don't have to be a skilled grafter whatsoever. It's really, really fun to try at home.
Well, Steve Bradley introduced us last month to the idea of doing cuttings like this, and I was fascinated by it because I've come across hardwood cuttings, but the actual sort of softwood one, or soft, what do you call them, Chris? Are they?
Yes, softwood cuttings and softwood, and then the different types of scion grafts and such like, which he discussed.
Really interesting. So, going to look into that some more.
Okay. So, Michael, what sort of happened next on your career journey? So you parted company with Thompson & Morgan to go on to a freelance career. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah. Well, I didn't leave for any bad reason, or kind of even through being bored, but kind of just wanting some new experiences. And I think it was probably about 7 years ago now. And I think this was the point where social media had started a few years before, and kind of the kind of horticultural sphere was changing a little bit. So there was a lot of newer companies starting, kind of a different buzz around horticulture. A lot of us think it started in 2020, but it actually started, kind of even 4 years before then. So yeah, I could see different opportunities around. Like, being at Thompson was great, but obviously it becomes very cyclical. You're introducing new products, so and so a year, kind of visiting, kind of. Yeah, I was looking to have a kind of mixed portfolio of work myself. And I started to pick up some work quite easily, really, with Seedball, who was starting to obviously get out there. They needed a bit of horticultural know-how, garden tags as well. I've always been very lucky at following my instincts. And I think basically that's because I just say yes to everything, even if it scares me. But kind of just everything just evolved and fell into place. So, as I came to the end of my time at Thompson & Morgan, there was then an offer to do some work for HSN in Florida in the US through a vendor that I already knew. So I guess I knew it was time to, spread my wings, because I wanted the mixed portfolio of work. But also I had a good kind of network of contacts across PR through the industry as well. And I'd always used social media as a portfolio as well. So it was a good way of kind of advertising who I was, what I do, and kind of, I think that's maybe different to some people where they do social media to kind of educate their followers, but kind of primarily mine is almost a showcase of work, which also interests followers because it gets them interested in different things. But really, my social media is really a visual CV almost, and that is what made it easy to then kind of transition into kind of that freelance career, really, which kind of dovetailed with that same moment where there was a lot of newer horticultural companies that needed a bit of help. So yeah, it's been amazing, and the opportunities keep coming because, of course, I keep showing what I'm up to, and also fundamentally, some really basic advice. Just go in and do a good job. A lot of people kind of, I don't know, they're either not reliable or they don't do as good a job as they could do, or I don't know. So I've just always been just try and be as nice a guy as possible, do what I'll say I do, deliver on time. Yeah, and just be easygoing and fun. And people seem to like that, I guess. So, yeah, here I am.
Brilliant. Well, certainly looking at your, now what do you call it? A bit historic here. Hit the socials.
Yeah.
You've got some lovely images, and a moment ago you mentioned Seedballs, and now that's a product we've been selling here
3 or 4 years.
a good few years.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed by how well it sells because it just sort of suddenly appeared. And now you mention the fact that you had something to do with it. It kind of makes a little bit more sense because I guess it's maybe the younger generation.
I'm not laying claim for its success.
But more the fact that it's one of these products that has come about, and it's obviously had a lot of traction in the social media sort of areas of marketing, and maybe that's why it's so successful because it's a really... Well, it's a fun little product, isn't it?
And just like you're saying, Pete, it's probably found a new audiences, or audiences have come to it because of its appeal. The other thing, Michael, I was going to say, I was looking back at my Facebook feed this morning from 7 years ago when I was watching you. You were Kirkenhoffing, I think you put on your album title, which was really good. So you're obviously out and about in Holland 7 years ago. So that is a really good showcase of you getting out there and doing your stuff.
I think I've been with KLM actually, so that was really great. Onto the Seedball, I think the way it's packaged is really cool because it kind of fits into the gifting area as much as it does into the kind of normal horticultural area. Again, kind of it's about good timing, I think, with that product as well, and also rather than being a fancy name, it kind of says what it does on the tin as well. Seedball. Seedball. There you go.
And it's in a tin.
So, really simple. Yeah.
But no, it's a good little product. I've not tried one yet, but I certainly the idea behind it and the marketing is, and it's very clear and easy to understand what you're going to get. So
totally. And it wouldn't be out of place in a shop that didn't even sell plants.
No, it wouldn't. Not at all. No, it'd sit very comfortably, as you say, in the gift department. Michael, you are you are a major globetrotter these days, and we see you in many of the gardening trade shows. Why do you think these are so important to you as a go-to place?
Well, that's where you see what's coming through, and I think I've always seen myself as, with my kind of follower base and kind of the activity I do, as kind of a conduit, really, between the industry and the consumer. Because, my followers are obviously a lot of consumers. I get out there, see a lot of things in the industry. I then kind of pass on that knowledge to the consumers, but also I can give the industry a bit of feedback from consumers because very often I see so many links in the chain and nobody really ever talks directly to the consumer. And it's like Chinese whispers sometimes. It's like, what do the consumers really want? Well, we never really ask them. We just kind of assume and kind of analyze and this and that. Let's get in front of them. So I kind of like to be that conduit. So that's why I like to get out there to trade shows, not only to educate myself because I love to learn. Even when I'm in Holland, I'll visit. Last week I was with Amigra, the grass nursery, because I wanted to learn about grasses. How do you propagate a whole nursery of Festuca, for example? So it's always learning, and that is part of the trade show element as well. Obviously, it's kind of in my roots to go there and look for new products as well. So I do write about a lot of this on my Substack, which is quite a new platform that I've been working with recently. So it's just about getting out there kind of beneath the surface almost. And my recent work with IPM, I was really lucky to be invited to actually create coverage for them as well, almost as a roving reporter, as it were. And I'll be doing the same at GLEE, actually, in June. So, it's just, again, it's about putting myself out there, advertising myself, because, put it this way, IPM would never have invited me to do this if they hadn't seen my work on social media. So, never be shy, but also kind of to add to what I added as a few tips earlier, kind of obviously believe in yourself, but never take that over the line where you believe your own hype, if you see what I mean. But kind of obviously believe in yourself, say yes, do a good job, but don't let it go to your head too much. Still stay humble, and because even when you say, "Oh, he's such a globetrotter," I'm like, well, I'm just doing stuff. That's kind of I don't know what to say to that. That explain it well.
It does indeed. No, mate.
Getting out there, that's it. Yeah.
And it must be very different now from having worked at Thompson and Morgan, which I guess, although you're doing a lot of travelling, was essentially a 9 to 5, to now being freelance and you're doing TV work and you're doing all these social media posts and going out to companies and trying to understand and publish what they're up to. How does that work for you? Is it an improvement in your life, or you find it a lot harder than it was before?
No, it's kind of a lot of plate spinning, but it is plate spinning because you choose to. I don't have to take on that level of work. I don't have to write about that nursery I went to. I don't even have to visit the nursery in the first place. But I'm doing it because I want to, and because I'm passionate about it, and because I want to learn, I want to share. And so, it's kind of plates that I'm really happy to spin. And to be honest, if there's ever, that moment in kind of late November when, I don't know, but in my corner of the industry, there's not too much happening. And I'm kind of like, I wish there was, I want to be busier. I want to be kind of complaining about being too busy. That is kind of like the soft spot for me. It's like, I got too much on today. Well, but if it was the opposite, you'd be bored. So there you go.
Yeah.
And so I kind of run on that kind of adrenaline, and I'm heavy into to-do lists, but to-do lists that evolve and change, and kind of not this endless to-do list that you never really pick off. So a to-do list that kind of moves from being in my phone reminders onto paper and sometimes back again, but it's just kind of agile, and I don't know, I just kind of roll with it. And I'm very happy to kind of do things on the spot, flex, pivot. If I know someone needs something now, then I'll kind of shift around and kind of try and make everyone happy. And you kind of, I don't know, it seems to work really. I don't know if it's just because I'm very positive, and so kind of good fortune falls on me because I kind of just, I don't know, I keep the faith and I just kind of say yes to stuff even when it scares me, and it just then propels you forward to feel better, more confident about yourself at the same time. So it's a balancing act that I'm really happy to balance really. And
Brilliant.
Every so often you need kind of like, I've just had 2 kind of really heavy days of admin days, and they've been good. And I was kind of almost panicking about those. But what I did, late last week, I knew there was certain stuff I needed to do on Friday. There was certain stuff that could wait until Monday, and there was certain stuff that will wait till Tuesday. So rather than one to-do list, I've almost got like 3 in sequence. So I'm not looking at one big list and being like, whoa. I'm looking at one smaller list and I'm like, whoa, I can get that done in a Friday. That's cool. Move on to the Monday list. La, 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 la. So it's just about pacing yourself. And I really rely on phone reminders, honestly. And that is also a clever way to stay reliable and get back to people when you say you will as well. Because I think I surprised some people because they're kind of like, oh, can you get back to us mid next week? And to me, get back to you mid next week, that is then imprinted in my head. I'm like, right, okay, Wednesday, I'll come back. Right, 12 noon, that is midweek. And I can be really anal about that, but it's what keeps you reliable. And that is where an iPhone is your best tool, even better than, I don't know, even better than a plant in your hands, because that is what keeps you reliable. And so those reminders, I work with companies for different social media posts. They always go out exactly when I say they will, because you've got no excuse not to, really. We've got enough technology for you to be reliable, and that is part of the secret to success, I believe. Yeah.
So talking about reliable...
Was that a bit of a rant?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, some really good positives there. No, that's good. I'm sure we could all learn from some of those pointers, Michael, definitely.
But you know what, dude? It's so fundamental, though. That's the thing that amazes me. It's just about being a good person, being reliable, doing what you say you'll do. But the number of people that don't is shocking.
Yeah.
But it's what sets you apart. It's what gets you ahead. But it's so bloody easy, to be honest. I know that sounds weird.
So let's just quickly talk about, your TV work. Obviously, you've guested on lots of shows, but obviously you do lots of work on the shopping channel. Is that QVC?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell us how that sort of evolved and the process of doing that?
Well, again, this was kind of from being pushed into doing it by my old boss, Paul Hansford, again.
Right.
But I'm always, not pushed, but encouraged into it. And that's what I do to other people. I like to uplift people, make them feel like they can do stuff. And I really hate when people talk themselves down. So this is kind of obviously where I was in those days, but I was encouraged to do it because he knew I could do it. And ultimately, if you're talking about something that you know about and you're passionate about, it's actually really easy because you're not trying to bluff it. You're not trying to make it up. It's coming from the heart. And that is when I'm standing up on TV, whether that's Steph's Pat Lunch, QVC this morning, I'm talking about plants because I love them and because I've been the guy that goes out there and finds them as well. And that is what makes it easy and what makes it genuine as well. And so QVC has really evolved over the years. I was originally a guest for Thompson and Morgan. I'm now the gardening expert there. We've now got extra shows on the extra channels every weekday as well. I'm on a Wednesday, 5 till 7. And those shows are evolving. They're being a lot more customer interaction as well, showing a lot more of our own personalities and bringing in, different trips that I've been on, kind of different images for those trips. And also this weekend, we're actually doing a live broadcast from Holland as well, which is really cool. So, I'm I was lying in bed last night, kind of like, oh God, I feel a bit nervous about that, but also excited because I know that we'll pull it off. Do you know what I mean? And that's sometimes the fear that a lot of people would feel and they wouldn't do it. But you got to push yourself, otherwise you'll never know. So, it's been a really good experience and also something that gives you a lot of experience of live TV, gives you a lot of experience of talking on your feet and being able to evolve how you talk about something and change. And we said at the beginning, I said, I never edit a podcast, and I don't really expect you to edit this because you just talk and it's natural conversation and it just flows. Yeah. And it does give you a lot of experience with that. So I can talk forever now. So another 10 minutes, you could give me like a block of time and I could fill that time with kind of hopefully coherent chat.
I guess that must be part of your skill base, though, that you need to do that sort of work because there must be set times to work within, and this is sort of what you've got to achieve. And it's a bit like when you listen to the radio, and they always manage to get the conversation to come to a sort of good close just before the news or whatever thing that happens. I mean, is that a skill?
Oh, totally. But there's a difference as well when people watch back what they've done. So if I was to watch back, like a segment on QVC, I would be like, oh, why did I say that? What did I do that for? Oh God, what was that word about? But when the viewer watches it, and indeed when you watch TV, do you listen to every word? Do you overanalyze every sentence? You don't, because you kind of mostly watch passively. So you kind of, part of the key to it is getting over that first of all. Yep. But also the other thing, which a lot of people don't realize you kind of have to do is we sell a range of different products, not all that I would have in my own garden, but that's realistic. And part of the job is putting yourself in the shoes of people that would have that plant in their garden or that accessory. And you're not pretending that you like everything, but you are putting yourself in the space of, helping people that would enjoy those things as well. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of feel they couldn't do that, and where they kind of put too much of their personal opinion into that type of work as well. And it's about putting yourself in lots and lots of different people's shoes as well as sharing what it's like to be in your own shoes as well.
Mm-hmm. They reckon there's lots of new gardeners out there, Michael. We know that the HTA, the Horticultural Trade Association, reckon that there's over 2 million more gardeners that started back before the pandemic, back in 2020. What would be your sort of nugget advice for any new aspiring gardeners coming to the fold?
Oh gosh, do you know what though? It's funny you say that because I've just been on a forest retreat that Ellen Mary had arranged in the forest, and spending like 2 days with a lot of people that were kind of younger than me, but so passionate about horticulture. It's so interesting because they do come at it from a much more accessible angle, almost more accessible than we do as older people as well. So I think kind of the advice is kind of almost quite basic, kind of like almost each to their own. We can't assume that everyone wants to garden the way we do. And over the years, everyone kind of, discusses Gardener's World, and they're kind of like, oh, is this really appealing to this, and this? And it's like, well, to be fair to the program, it might not be your cup of tea, but it can't bend to be everyone's cup of tea. And that is what it is. And maybe then different people learn from different places. And, there are a lot of different outlets, and your outlet might almost be an individual person on Instagram that makes videos about their garden. And that might be who you learn from. rather than an official TV program on the terrestrial channel. So I think we need to kind of realise that everyone learns in very different ways from very different people as well. And I think just generally to take the snobbishness out of it and kind of allowing it to be accessible to everyone is really the key. So really, not labouring kind of, Latin terms of kind of you must do this way. It's kind of just letting people find out for themselves almost to a degree. I don't know. It's kind of just about being a bit more laissez-faire in a way. Although I know in horticulture we kind of, over the years, we've tended to get a chip on our shoulders. I think this comes from it being quite undervalued as a sector and a career. So we kind of then become quite protectionist about it almost. And then we're kind of then protecting our knowledge, kind of like really kind of being quite vehement about the value of our knowledge as well. So we then don't want to share it openly. We want to bring new people in, but we also don't because we don't want them to dilute it. So it's kind of, I think it's about us just chilling a bit and realizing that everyone will approach it in a very different way. And we can't micromanage that, because if we do, we'll never let the new people in, Does that make sense?
It does indeed.
Yeah.
And I think also now with social media, but also with things like YouTube, which obviously has been around for many years now, people are accessing knowledge in so many different ways. They might watch Gardener's World, but that might, give them a spark of inspiration to discover more. But as you're saying, things like...
And that doesn't have to be for everyone,
No, indeed.
And certainly it's not part of your membership as a gardener that you have to watch it. I think generally, and I see this sometimes on the Instagram kind of horticultural world, it's like everyone feels they have to do the same thing, and you don't at all, It's just do what you do. I certainly do.
Brilliant. And I must say, sort of talking about the sort of modern learning methods, the only thing that amuses me sometimes is that you put on these shorts on YouTube, and so many of them are just utter rubbish, like how to grow seeds on a potato because it's going to grow better, or just stuff like that. And it does. I don't know why people put those sort of things up. I guess they're
too much time on their hands. Maybe, I don't know.
Do you find that sort of has a negative impact on any of the things that you've been doing, or do you think people are wise enough to actually realise that this is just rubbish?
I guess again, and this might sound quite hands off, but again, you can't micromanage everything. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, I think people will naturally gravitate towards the better quality stuff anyway, in a natural way. And you can't worry about what is wrong out there. Let's just focus on what is right out there, I guess. Yeah, so I kind of just, I don't know, I guess it just kind of glosses over me, as it were. So, I guess that's it, really. I guess I don't get too hung up on it almost. And I know there's some people kind of would worry about that, but we have social media, the internet it's a platform that everyone can access. You're always going to have this problem, and you're kind of always going to be fighting the misinformation here and there, but it's kind of like it is a losing battle, and hopefully we've got enough kind of good information that false information or bad information kind of generally long term kind of gets drowned out by the noise of all the good stuff. So
yeah, definitely. Michael, I've been reading Nick Hamilton's book. That's the late Geoff Hamilton's son. It's the book called The Right Genes, and he said in his wonderful book, horticulture is a life choice. It's not a job. So I suppose that begs the question, Michael, what drives you?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it is indeed, when you've got your passion as a career, it doesn't then feel like a job. But I guess maybe someone who's a vet would have a similar thing. Maybe an accountant, their passion is finance. They would feel the same thing. So it's about choosing for your career the same thing that you have as a hobby. But also, just before I answer your question, that also obviously has downfalls, because when I am here kind of like with a full to-do list, realizing that every day is a potential work day, because obviously I then work weekends, but even if I wasn't working weekends, I would still be visiting gardens or garden centres, which is still technically then kind of work as well. So obviously, if you are going to have a passion that links to your career, remember you won't necessarily get any true downtime, as it were. What was your original question, though? I had to have that wisdom. What was the question?
Yeah. So what sort of what? Yeah. Well, I think that's it, isn't it? It is wisdom and doing what you enjoy doing. Certainly.
Yeah, definitely. So it is about just following your passion and knowing that you love what you do. Really. Yeah.
Exactly.
But also, chatting to a lot of people at the weekend at the forest retreat I'm amazed at how many people have a good presence on Instagram. They have a business that is selling plants or doing this and that. And then I sit down to chat to them. This is actually their side hustle. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they I don't know how people manage to have that kind of almost like dual careers as well. That takes a lot of energy and commitment. But I guess their passion for plants is kind of then coming through there. But maybe the reason they're not jumping into it as a full-time career is because of that perception of the kind of lower wage or kind of the less kind of comprehensive nature of horticulture as a career choice. But in what I do, I want to show people that you can have great success. You can aim high. You can earn good money. You can have a job that is really quite different to what you might expect from horticulture as well. There's something for everyone in this industry.
And I think, like you said, ultimately it's if you can find a career that makes you happy because you're passionate about that happy, that's far more fulfilling than just going off to work and earning a wage for something that you don't really enjoy. And I mean, that's something that one of the things I love about working in the garden centre industry is the fact that we get to move around, we get to go outside, we get to... I mean, you think you're looking at plants and it's
analysing
just checking that everything's okay and making sure that you're trying to sell the best plants ever. It's a lovely career, and I think if you can enjoy what you do, it makes life so much more fun, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So but I mean, these days more than ever, you can follow that career path because social media has opened up so many extra possibilities, networking. This weekend that I've been on, to see the friendships that have risen up through, meeting each other on Instagram. And some of those people say, I enjoy these friends better than I do my original childhood friends because suddenly you've got friends and contacts that aren't more natural because they're following that same passion that you are as well. Yeah, don't underestimate it. When I was a 16-year-old horticulturalist, just beavering away in my own greenhouse at home, imagine if I'd had Instagram or social media to reach out and other people, it would have been amazing. So advice to any young people these days is kind of, reach out, share, make friends, push yourself forward because, we have the best tool ever in horticulture right now. And it's amazingly not even a trowel, it's social media.
You talk about obviously you growing up, and were there any heroes or sort of big influences in your life, Michael, that you can remember inspiring you about horticulture? Obviously, your grandparents played a big role in that, I should imagine. Was there any? We talked about Gardener's World. Were you into Gardener's World and Geoff Hamilton, or who inspired you?
I would say definitely my grandparents for sure. I wouldn't say, if you ask me for the present day, I'd say there wouldn't be anyone necessarily influencing me in this present day because I don't like to worry about what other people are doing. I just kind of follow my own path there. But indeed, if we go back to childhood, it would be that kind of Gardener's World kind of selection of people. So the ones that were in the magazines, on the shows at that time, which was obviously Geoff, but also Pippa Greenwood and Swithinbank. Still, when I was working with her at the Cactus Show, it's kind of such a weird thing to then work with someone that you've read about in magazines when you were young. It's so strange, and you kind of never get over it, which is like the level of cringe that I imagine a lot of people would be if they met Mariah Carey, for example. I don't know. Like, what are you like? Oh, I love your work. It's like you kind of desperately want to stay cool, but you also want to let them know how much it meant to you as well. Yeah. Bearing in mind, it might not mean as much to them because they probably met 4,000 people like you. You know what I mean? But you have to be realistic about it. But yeah, it's kind of that would be my kind of influences, I would say. And yeah, really nice, warm memories of childhood with looking forward to the Gardener's World magazine and the TV show, and kind of because that was the only outlet at that point, really. So that made a lot of sense to me.
Indeed. And Michael, could we just sort of chat a little bit about your charity work? You're obviously involved in quite a number.
Yeah, so over the years, I'd worked with Perennial. We had the Grubby Gardeners campaign, which was basically a really cool way to get naked to raise money. So we basically did a World Naked Gardening Day shoot at Kensington Roof Gardens originally. That moved into a calendar, a few different calendars. I think the calendar still happens. We raised about 25 grand for Perennial. We were on Loose Women once, doing naked gardening tips. We did muddy runs as well. Naked skydive in a morph suit, not necessarily naked. It's kind of fun stuff because I guess a while ago I tapped into, wanting to get people interested in horticulture from lots of different sectors, and that could be from cookery, chefs. It could be artists. It could be people that like to laugh at cheeky plants and rude botany and kind of Rubus cockburnianus or kind of naked gardens. Just trying to pull people from all of those different sectors to bring them into our amazingly fascinating world that we have in horticulture. So it was really, kind of a project in that really. And also it's cool to then have these things that people know you for as well. But also that's why I gave it up, because you don't want to be known as the naked gardener forever. So,
no, yeah. Leave that to the calendar girls, shall we? Yeah.
But it's a bit of fun, and somehow there's this kind of like river of smut that runs through horticulture anyway. We're putting out, we're sowing seed, we're planting sarcococca, it's kind of, and it's a great way to get people's attention, and that's kind of what it was always a vehicle for me.
And there's nothing wrong with a double entendre, is there?
Absolutely not.
It makes you laugh.
Yeah,
it's
indeed.
part of fun in life,
Yeah.
isn't it? Excellent. And Michael, you talked about herbs earlier, obviously going out and finding all these wonderful new plants that you've brought to the market. Have you got any sort of favourite group of plants or a favourite plant?
I would say iris, because I remember painting an iris on a stone for my grandma when I was young.
Okay.
So it has also, it's a really interesting plant where you probably got every colour of the rainbow, one for every season, very different looking ones as well. So I'd say, whenever anyone asks me my favourite plant, that is my easy answer.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
It's a beautiful flower as well. I love it.
Yes, and they have. I'm going to say they have their moment, don't they? That's the thing, as you're saying, all the year round. Obviously, I think
of course. There's one for every season, really, and every position too. Think about it.
For sure. Yeah. Michael, do you have any sort of sage advice for encouraging younger people to get involved in horticulture?
Yeah, well, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. We've kind of get out there, use social media, kind of realize that, in my day, we didn't have that as a tool to be able to use. And like more than ever, you can reach out to like-minded people. And this is just beautiful because you never feel alone now in horticulture. Think of all those lonely head gardeners that have now been able to reach out to people. There's so much potential. Don't waste it, really. Just do that. And when you do get a job or work on something, just then be reliable, turn up on time, all of that basic stuff that we talked about, do a good job and enjoy it all, It seems basic, but it makes a lot of sense.
No, definitely. And I guess as we're coming to the end of the show, we get to ask our favourite questions. Every guest we've asked so far, we'd like to put them on a virtual desert island, Michael.
Oh, yeah.
And ask, what plant or gardening implement would you take with you to your desert island and why?
I don't need a gardening implement because I think your hands are good enough for digging and all of that. So I don't need an implement. Okay. Does that mean I can take 2 plants, maybe?
You can take whatever you like. Yeah, we're quite...
We're amenable.
Well, one plant would be a plant I'm kind of low-key obsessed with at the moment, which is Eremophila nivea. And it's amazing. It's hardier than I realised. It's lovely silver leaves. It's like a rosemary that's been splashed with silver, and it has even brighter, bigger flowers than a rosemary. Really, really incredible plant. I guess I have to have a food plant as well. I don't know, mint. I love mint.
It's an easy one to grow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. No, well, it's always good for a mojito on a desert island as well.
Gosh, yeah, that'd be a nice combination. Michael, we do like to ask our guests if they have any related gardening stories, amusing or a joke perhaps you'd like to share with us.
I think probably my saddest story I can tell you is when I was young, I for some reason, we rooted some tradescantia plants at school, and I took it home to plant it into the garden. I don't know why. It was a training one.
Okay.
And I turned around to plant the plant, and I stood on it, and it's one of my saddest earliest gardening memories.
Oh,
and I stood on it too much that it would regrow. So yeah, that was my saddest memory. I'm so sorry to end on that, but it's brought back all sorts of memories now.
Sounds quite traumatic, to be honest with you.
I've not. You've seen a spider plant used as bedding. Were you hoping it would make a sort of good border plant, or what were you hoping out of it?
I don't know at that age, but at this age, I definitely would plant it in a container. Sure.
Brilliant, thank you. And
Thank you.
Obviously, probably the people who are listening to this are probably already savvy enough to know where to find you. But for those of us that haven't got that interactive with social media yet, can you give us some pointers as to where we can find out more about you, Michael?
Absolutely. So you'll find me on Instagram, Twitter, Mr_PlantGeek. I've also got a comprehensive website called MrPlantGeek.com, which will give you all of those I've mentioned, but it will also take you to my different social media platforms too. I'm getting quite into Substack, so look me up on there, Mr. Plant Geek as well, where I write about a lot of my new plant findings, etc., etc. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you there.
Nice one. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on today,
it's been
Michael.
great,
it's been
hasn't it?
great chatting with you.
No worries.
And I mean, we'll look forward to following your adventures around the world or over in Holland over the next few years. So thank you for your time, and keep on doing what you're doing, Michael. You're doing a grand job.
Thank you very much.
Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.